Hey everyone, Till here. Today I'm reviewing the Ugee UE16, which is a 15.4-inch 1080p pen display. First of all, disclaimer, this is a review unit provided by the company, and in this video I'll just present to you my findings so that you can decide whether this is worth the money. And the price of this pen display at the time of review is US $180. As usual, let me give you the bottom line up front. For many years now, whenever people ask me for a budget pen display recommendation, I would always recommend they check out the Ugee U1600, which is a 15.4-inch pen display selling at US $160 on Amazon. And that pen display has been discontinued. And that pen display can be thought of as the previous model for this UE16. The differences are, well, Ugee has added more hotkeys here, and this is $20 more. In terms of drawing performance, you can expect excellent pen performance, as in the lines, they are expressive. You can get thin and thick lines very easily. So this pen is very sensitive. I measured 99% sRGB, 92% Adobe RGB, 97% P3, and 191 nits of brightness. Downsides or limitations: this is a matte screen protector, so it may scratch with usage, and I cannot tell you how easy or resistant this is to scratches because I haven't been using this for an extended period of time. Another downside is there is anti-glare sparkle. So all matte textured screen protectors will have this grain, color noise, or anti-glare sparkle, and on this display I can see it, but it's not too distracting personally for me. Sharpness is not affected by the matte screen protector, but there will be pixelation from the 1080p resolution. And this is a really good size to work with. You can have palettes on the left and right and still have plenty of space for drawing. This pen display can be powered by one single USB-C video connection from your computer. And if you use HDMI, the HDMI 3-to-1 cable is included. There's also a folding stand that is included. This pen display has some other minor downsides which I will talk more about later. Now, as a whole, this is definitely something I can recommend very easily whenever people ask me for a budget pen display, because it is so difficult to find a 15-inch pen display under $200 and this one works really well, and the visuals actually look pretty good. So going forward, this is definitely my budget recommendation for people who have less than $200. By the way, if you guys have intention to buy this pen display, consider supporting my YouTube channel by making your purchase through the affiliate links that I have for you in the video description below. So yesterday I saw the price was $180 and now it's back to $200 on Ugee's website. But on Amazon, this is now selling at $160 for the Black Friday sale. Okay, let's move on to the full review. Let's take a look at the items included in the box. There are two boxes. The 3-in-1 cable is packed separately. So this is the pen display, and everything is packed very neatly, and let me take them all out first. We have the warranty card, quick start guide, microfiber cleaning cloth, a very generous number of replacement pen tips, pen tip remover. The pen display supports USB-C video connection or HDMI video connection. If you want to use HDMI, you need to use this 3-to-1 cable. So this USB-C will go to the pen display. This red USB will go to a power source. This black USB will go to your computer so that you can use the pen. And this full-size HDMI will go to your computer to get video signal. What's not included is a USB power adapter, which may be needed if your pen display is unable to run at maximum brightness, but you can just use any phone charger for that. USB-A to USB-C data or power cable, USB-C to USB-C video cable. This is the pen that supports tilt and slightly over 16,000 levels of pressure sensitivity. There are 2 side buttons and 1 eraser at the back, and I'll talk more about this later. This is the tablet stand included that you can keep inside the drawstring pouch, and you can deploy the stand by pulling this apart, lift this up, and you have to fold out the foldable feet, and this will give you different angles of deployment. This is the lowest angle, and I would say it's quite stable because there is rubber grip beneath to prevent the stand from moving on the table. And this is the highest angle, and there is a total of 10 angles to choose. And there is rubber padding here to prevent scratching the bottom of the pen display, and rubber padding here as well to prevent scratching the back of the pen display. When you first take the pen display out from the box, there will be this protective film to protect the glass. It says here that after you peel off this protective film, the pen display cannot be returned. So what you should do is to connect the pen display to your computer, test the pen, make sure everything works before you peel off the protective film. When you peel off the protective film, make sure you do not peel off the matte screen protector that is behind. So this surface should be matte textured. It should not be glossy and reflective. That is actually something quite important to know. So the surface should look like this. There should be diffuse reflection, not sharp, glossy reflections. Let's look at the design of this pen display. So this is a clean and simple design. It's nothing special, it's just a functional design. The corners are rounded off and the bezels are quite big, but that's okay because it gives you space to rest your palm. There are 8 hotkeys with firm feedback by the side, and there is 1 wheel with a button in the middle, and all these are customizable. There is a pen holder here at the bottom, and that's where you can keep the pen. The build quality feels slightly plasticky, but it's solid enough. Now if you try to flex this, you can hear the squeaky sound, so don't flex it on purpose. As I run my finger along the edges, I can feel some sharp edges. Not sharp enough to cut your fingers, but it would be good if the company can, bevel those edges a bit more. So on the right side, you will find 2 USB-C ports, and this one is for the 3-to-1 cable. The other one is for the USB-C video cable. The ports are actually recessed into the pen display, so if you want to use your own cable, you have to get a cable where the connector is small enough to go inside the pen display. On the other side, where the hotkeys are, there is the power light indicator, the power button, and the brightness control buttons. To access the OSD, you have to press the 2 brightness buttons at the same time. These are the display options available with the OSD. There is sRGB, Adobe RGB, DCI-P3, grayscale, and custom. And custom is the best option to use for color calibration. The back is made with plastic, and this is matte textured, and this is quite susceptible to fingerprints. There are 2 long pieces of rubber feet and 2 smaller pieces here. Now as I move the pen display around, I can see that this pen holder is kind of flimsy, so I may not want to keep the pen there. I wish the build quality could be better, but there will be some compromises with a budget 15.4-inch pen display. In case you do not know, it is incredibly difficult to find a 15 or 16-inch pen display under $200 US. This display is laminated, but there is still a little gap there, which is noticeable because right now the camera is pointing from the side. When you look from the front, the gap will not be noticeable. So the line will look like it's coming from directly beneath the pen tip. Let's talk about the visual quality of this display. So this is a 15.4-inch display with 1920 by 1080 resolution. Refresh rate is 60 Hz, and this is not a touch screen. This display comes with a matte textured screen protector, and the anti-glare, as you can see, is quite aggressive. So if there are reflections on the surface, you won't be able to see anything on the display, as the brightness is actually high, but not high enough to go through the diffused reflections, especially on such an aggressive anti-glare surface. I have already color calibrated the display, and I measured color support for 99% sRGB, 90% NTSC, 92% Adobe RGB, and 97% P3, and a maximum brightness of 191 nits. So the color accuracy for this pen display is quite good. Anything over 90% Adobe RGB to me is pretty good, especially for a budget pen display. Another thing you need to know is all matte textured surfaces will introduce some grain, color noise, or anti-glare sparkle. And on this matte textured surface, I can see some anti-glare sparkle. The sharpness is not affected. I wouldn't say the anti-sparkle is that distracting, but it's definitely there. And next, let's take a look at what the driver can do. I'm using the Mac driver here, but the Windows driver should have similar functionality. So this is where you can customize the side buttons for the pen and also the eraser. I have one button here set to switch monitor or switch display. So this will allow me to move the cursor from this display to the other display, and there are 3 modes. So right now the cursor is here. If I press once, the cursor goes over there. If I press again, the cursor can go across both displays. So this allows me to drag this window over there and back. You can enable or disable mouse mode, pen pressure, and tilt. And this is where you can customize the pen pressure by moving the 3 control points or choose from the pre-programmed pressure curves. Let's go to drawing. So this is where you can customize the 8 hotkeys by the side. And you can input your own keyboard shortcuts or have a mouse action or choose from the pre-programmed shortcuts that you see here. Run applications, there are system functions, multimedia controls, or disable the hotkey. Let's leave all this as default. And this is where you can customize the roller, which is the dial or the wheel by the side. And you can, same thing, input keyboard shortcuts. Now some drawing apps may not have keyboard shortcuts for the rotation, so the roller may not rotate with certain drawing apps. Under floating shortcut keys, you can create virtual hotkeys on the display, up to 16 hotkeys, and same thing, you can input your own keyboard shortcuts and choose from the pre-programmed shortcuts. I have enabled this physical hotkey to show the virtual hotkey, so I can increase the volume here or decrease the volume with my pen. This is not a touch screen, so you cannot touch that. And once you're done with the shortcuts, just close this. Under work area is where you can customize the working area of the pen display, and you can leave this as default. If there is cursor misalignment with this pen, you can calibrate the pen here so that the cursor is directly beneath the pen tip. And if you are left-handed, you can adjust the rotation here 180 degrees so that the physical hotkeys are on the right side instead of the left. Oh, one thing I almost forgot to mention is for the hotkeys, you can actually create groups of hotkeys for specific apps that you use. For example, you can create a group of hotkeys for Photoshop. And if you use Illustrator, you can add an app here, Illustrator, and create another group of shortcuts specific to Illustrator. So whenever the drawing app you use is active, the shortcuts will switch automatically. which is quite convenient. And lastly, you can back up all your shortcuts here. Let's take a closer look at this pen before the line test. So this pen is not powered by battery, so no charging is required. There are 2 customizable side buttons and the eraser is also customizable. This pen is lightweight. It feels plasticky, but the build quality is solid enough. The surface is matte textured and thankfully it provides enough grip. The pen tip has slight movement when in contact with the drawing surface. This pen has tilt sensitivity and supports slightly over 16,000 levels of pressure sensitivity. Time for the line test, and the app that I'm using is Medibank Paint. So the writing performance of this pen is quite good. Good as in this is able to capture my handwriting style quite accurately. Let's look at the initial activation first. So this is how thick the brush is. And now I'm drawing with a light touch. Let me try and draw with almost no pressure. I can get the thin lines, and this is quite thin. Let's draw a straighter line with the help of this piece of paper. The lines look pretty straight to me. I guess if you look really close, you may be able to see slight wobble, but it's not really an issue here. Let's see how the lines taper. So if you use a thick brush, the lines are not going to taper that smoothly. If you don't apply that much pressure, you can see the line taper is now smoother and sharper. And this is good for creating cross hatching. Line transition from thin to thick. This is also a diagonal line, so I don't see any noticeable diagonal line wobble. The transition is smooth and I can draw thin lines after drawing the thick lines. Now, not all pens can draw thin lines after drawing the thick line. So this pen is quite sensitive. Let's see if we can maintain consistent line width by maintaining consistent pressure, and it works fine. Let's draw some dots. So sometimes when you tap on the display, the dots do not appear. So for this app, you actually have to tap and drag slightly. Let's switch over to Clip Studio Paint to test the dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Works fine here. And the last test is the cursor misalignment test, where I will join separate lines to see if the lines will overshoot or if I will leave any gaps. So I'm looking at the pen tip. I'm not looking at where the cursor is. Oops. And I can join the lines without any issues. Cursor tracking is quite accurate right to the edge of the display on both left and right edges. Next, let's see if there is any cursor misalignment when we change the angle of the pen very noticeably. So now the pen is vertical, and now this is my normal drawing position, and this is vertical, normal drawing position, and I don't really see much or any cursor misalignment. Next, let's look at tilt sensitivity. This is Kritar, and I can see some problem with the cursor, which looks jumpy. The cursor is able to follow the direction of the pen, but when I try to draw a smooth circle, you can see all the jagged edges, so this is unnatural. Next, let's test for tilt. So this is with pressure, and this is with tilt and pressure working together. And now let's talk about drawing experience. So 15.4 inch is a good size to work with, and this is how big the display is compared to A4 size paper. So it's not as tall, but it's wider by this much. So when you are using a drawing app with palettes on the left and right side, there is still a good amount of space left over for drawing. The app that I'm using here is Medibank Paint, and this pen glides on the surface really smoothly, so this is going to take some time to get used to. Let's use the eraser here. And here the buttons, they work fine, but my hand is always on the keyboard, so I don't actually use the hotkeys that often. Pressure sensitivity works great. Now this matte textured surface does attract fingerprints and smudges quite easily, so after each drawing session I will have to wipe it clean, otherwise it gets dirty really easily. This pen is very sensitive and initial activation force is very low. Now this is not a touch screen, so on many occasions I actually find myself wanting to use finger gestures, but this pen display does not support finger gestures. So this is how thick the line is. And with a pen that is this sensitive, you can draw thin and thick lines very easily to get the line variation that you want. And here you can see the lines are able to taper quite nicely. Oops. It is easier for the lines to taper if you use a thinner brush. And notice how smooth the line is even when the thickness varies. So as I am drawing, I can see the anti-glare sparkle of the matte texture, but it's not really too much of an issue for me. Pen glides really smoothly. So there is some tactile experience with the matte textured surface, but the pen overall still glides quite smoothly. I wouldn't say it's slippery, but it's definitely very smooth. Now you can still get even better pressure performance if you tweak the pressure curve. So right now I'm actually just using the default pressure curve. Yeah, so the drawing experience for me is very positive. I mean, the lines, they come out just the way I expect them to. There are no surprises. Let's look at the hatching lines. The lines are able to taper quite smoothly, and latency is certainly not an issue for me. So this is my normal drawing speed. See how the lines taper. Let me zoom in closer for you. Now the resolution, which is 1080p, will have some pixelation, which is to be expected. But that's the compromise for, this budget pen display. Check out the tapered strokes. Really nice. And this is me drawing with minimal pressure. I'm just glancing the pen on the surface. Most of the drawing apps that I have tested work fine. So this is actually a pretty straightforward product to review because I don't have to do much troubleshooting. The driver works fine. Alright, to conclude, the line quality you can get from this pen is fantastic. The workflow is smooth without issues. The pen display works fine and the colors look decent. So going forward, this is definitely the pen display I would recommend whenever I have people asking me for budget pen display recommendations, because this is a really good one for $180. This is really good value for money.